Hi Year 10. I'm here in school today. It's really quiet and really strange being in the building without all of you. I'm borrowing a geography classroom, as you might have been able to tell, because my classroom is being painted and it's a bit of a mess at the moment. So today's double lesson is what we're going to do today, and that is look at the next section of the topic on relationships in the 21st century. And so we are going to do a lesson on divorce and remarriage. So for your single lesson on Tuesday, a lot of you use that time to do the assessments and do some catch up. So please send those to me by the end of the week so I can mark those and get those back to you. And those of you who weren't doing the assessment should have done a little bit of reading on divorce and remarriage to prepare for this lesson today. Okay, so today's lesson, as I said, is on divorce, and we are using the sheet that's in your packs. It should say divorce in the middle and have lots of boxes for you to fill in as we go through the lesson. So on your personal learning checklist, it says what you're expected to know for this topic. So it says you need to know the Christian teachings about divorce and remarriage, including Matthew 19, 1-12. Divergent Christian, non-religious, including atheist and humanist, attitudes to divorce and remarriage, and including the application of ethical theories such as situation ethics and the Christian responses to them. So we'll go through all of that in the lesson today. Key terms, if you did the reading on Tuesday, you'll have written these down already. If you haven't got them, please make sure they're in your books, please. So divorce is the legal ending of a marriage. Annulment is a declaration by the church that a marriage was never a true marriage, so the partners are free to marry. And remarriage is marrying more than once, so being married, divorced, and then getting married to somebody else. So for the first term, you can put that in box 1, and the others need to go in your book or wherever you can find space on the sheet. So I'd like to do a little bit of a mind map on this, please, or actually you can use box 4 to jot down your ideas. But what do you think are the common reasons why people choose to get divorced? And do you think there's any such thing as a good reason and a bad reason to have a divorce? Okay, so we're going to have a look in the context of divorce in the UK today. As you know, I think it's something like almost 50% of marriages end in divorce. And so we'll look at what the kind of legal situation in the UK is. And as I'm going through it, I want you to bear in mind, do you think that it's too difficult for people to get divorced these days? Or do you think it's too easy for people to get divorced? So, as I said, it's more than 1 in 3 marriages, actually. It's closer to half of all marriages. In England and Wales, divorce is allowed on the grounds that the marriage has irretrievably broken down. So there's no way of it being repaired or resolved. The Matrimonial Causes Act in 1973 specifies that the marriage may be found to be irretrievably broken down if one of the following is established. So by law, there has to be a reason for a divorce, and it will fall under one of these things. The first one is adultery, so that's having an affair. The second is unreasonable behaviour. The third is desertion, so if one partner leaves the other. But a divorce can only be granted if that's happened and they've stayed away for 2 years. A separation where both parties have agreed to divorce. Again, they need to be separated for 2 years. Separation when it's a contested divorce, so one partner says they don't want to be divorced, but one partner does. It can take up to 5 years in that situation to be divorced. Civil remarriage is allowed, so once you are divorced, you are legally allowed to remarry. However, what we're going to be unpacking today is that some religions or some denominations within those religions differ on whether they permit religious remarriage. So what we're talking about today when we talk about remarriage is remarriage in a church or remarriage that's accepted in the church. So what are the different attitudes to divorce in Christianity? And as you will have expected, there are lots of different attitudes, as there are with all of the other topics. Not all Christians think the same thing about divorce. So The Roman Catholic Church, traditionally the Roman Catholic Church does not allow divorce. So that is a really important thing to learn. The reasons for that is that they believe that marriage is a sacrament, and the only way that it can be dissolved is through death. So if you think back to paper 1, when we talked about the sacraments, there are 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church, and marriage is one of those. Other churches don't consider marriage to be a sacrament, so they would consider baptism and Eucharist to be a sacrament, but not marriage. In the wedding vows, the couple declare that they will stay together until death do us part. And so in the Catholic Church, they say that's a promise that's made in the eyes of God, and therefore the only way it can truly be ended is through one partner dying. However, the Catholic Church does allow annulment. So annulment is a declaration from the Church that a marriage was never a true marriage. This is only possible in some cases. So, for example, if it's proven that one or more partner were not kind of in their right mind, if it wasn't consummated, so that's they didn't have sex after the wedding, then it can be declared that it was never a true marriage, but that is quite difficult to get an annulment. Okay, on your sheet, actually it's all the way at the end, it's the extension box, but I think it's a good time to look at it now. On the sheet, it asks you to look at what are some of the more modern perspectives in the Catholic Church about divorce and remarriage, because although traditionally the Catholic Church say divorce is not allowed, it doesn't mean that no Catholics ever get divorced, because there are lots of situations now where actually people would still choose to be divorced even if their religion says they shouldn't. And so lots of Catholics are kind of rethinking this and changing their mind or giving allowances. I've talked to you about Pope Francis before. He's the current Pope, and on lots of these kind of contemporary issues around sexual relationships and marriage, he has kind of broken away from the traditional values of the Catholic Church. So I'm going to show you this video now, and you could jot down some stuff that he's saying in the extension box, which is part 6. But it might be that you'd like to go away and do a little bit of research on this as well. This speech is something he gave in 2017, but then in the last couple of years, there's also been some synods, so they're kind of like meetings of the Catholic Church councils, where they've discussed issues relating to marriage and family, especially kind of modern understandings of family. Things like LGBTQ rights have been discussed by the Catholic Church. So watch this and see what you think.
Come prenderci cura di coloro che, in seguito all'irreversibile fallimento del loro legame matrimoniale, hanno intrapreso una nuova unione. La Chiesa sa bene che una tale situazione contraddice il sacramento cristiano. Tuttavia, il suo sguardo di maestra attinge sempre da un cuore di madre, un cuore che, animato dallo Spirito Santo, cerca sempre il bene e la salvezza delle persone. Se poi guardiamo anche questi nuovi legami con gli occhi dei figli piccoli, i piccoli guardano, con gli occhi dei bambini vediamo ancora di più l'urgenza di sviluppare nelle nostre comunità un'accoglienza reale. In questi decenni, in verità, la Chiesa non è stata né insensibile né pigra. Grazie all'approfondimento compiuto dai pastori, guidato e confermato dai miei predecessori, è molto cresciuta la consapevolezza che è necessaria una fraterna e eterna accoglienza nell'amore e nella verità verso i battezzati che hanno stabilito una nuova convivenza dopo il fallimento del matrimonio sacramentale. In effetti, queste persone non sono affatto scomunicate, e non vanno assolutamente trattate come tali. Esse fanno sempre parte della Chiesa. Di qui il ripetuto invito dei pastori a manifestare apertamente e coerentemente la disponibilità della comunità ad accoglierli e a incoraggiarli perché vivano e sviluppino sempre più la loro appartenenza a Cristo e alla Chiesa con la preghiera, con l'ascolto della parola di Dio, con la frequenza alla liturgia, con l'educazione cristiana dei figli, con la carità e il servizio ai poveri, con l'impegno per la giustizia e la pace.
Okay, so he's saying there, he's talking about ways that people who are divorced and remarried in the Catholic Church have been treated before, because the Catholic Church does not allow people to be married again if they've been divorced. They don't believe that people can be divorced, even if legally they have been, and so they don't believe that they should be married again, even if legally or civilly they have got married again. In the eyes of the church, they are not married because they'll always be married to that first spouse. However, what the Pope is saying there is that those people should not be treated as if they're no longer part of the church. They shouldn't be excommunicated, that's the word he used there, but they should be still very much part of the church and not be kind of punished for getting a divorce or getting remarried. Traditionally, Catholics who are divorced and remarried are not allowed to take part in things like communion. But what he was saying there is that they should be allowed to be part of those things. Okay, so that was for the extension. Maybe you skip that bit, that's absolutely fine. We're going back now to look at other Christian denominations and their views towards divorce. So other denominations of Christianity do think that divorce is wrong. So it's not ideal. It's not how anyone who enters a marriage doesn't intend on it ending, and so it's not ideal. But it is the lesser of two evils, and I think we've looked at that term before. When two things are wrong and not ideal, there is one thing that is less wrong than the other, and so in some situations it is right for people to get a divorce. Most of the denominations allow you to remarry in a church after a divorce. But the people involved have to talk with the priest or minister. I mean, that's true if they're getting married for the first time anyway. So it's always at the discretion of the priest of the church. So what you should be able to do now, having looked at those kind of different ideas about divorce, is fill in the gaps on the sheet, which is task 3. Okay, so what are the reasons for the different attitudes? Well, as you probably have guessed, it comes back to how the Bible is interpreted, like with many other things in Christianity. And so let's have a look at that now. So Jesus actually taught in part of the Bible that divorce and remarriage is wrong. And the bit that Christians would refer to where he does that is in Mark chapter 10. It's partly because the couple have made a covenant with God. So before this bit that I'm going to show you, Jesus is asked, are we allowed to divorce? And what he says is, well, it says in the beginning that God made Adam and Eve, and then it says the man will leave his mother and father and be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. And that's a bit that is referred to in the wedding ceremony. And then they say this line, which is also from the Bible, which Jesus quoted. And it says, whatever God has joined together, let no one separate. So what it's saying is that it's a covenant between God. It's the two people have been joined together by God, and therefore that shouldn't ever be broken. What Jesus then goes on to say is anyone who divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery against her. And as we know, that's one of the 10 commandments, do not commit adultery. And what he's saying there is that remarriage is the same as adultery. If she divorces her husband and marries another man, she commits adultery. So there's no part on your sheet where you need to write that down, but I think it's important to refer to it. So you might just want to jot it down on the back of the sheet or in your book or wherever you have space. However, other Christians would say that in another part of the Bible, Matthew 19 verse 9, they would use the same bit of scripture to say that there are some situations where Jesus said divorce should be allowed. And that is, let's come back to those points in a minute, Matthew 19 verse 9. In this, it's actually the same story. So as we know, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John are the Gospels, and a lot of the stories of Jesus appear in more than one of those Gospels, but there's a slightly different angle of them. So this is one of those examples where it starts exactly the same. Someone comes to Jesus and says, are we allowed to get a divorce? And then he starts by saying the thing about Genesis and, you know, what God has joined together, no one should separate. And then he says this, I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife and marries another, except for sexual immorality, commits adultery. I don't know where that woman, another woman, sorry, that should say, except for sexual immorality, commits adultery. So what he's saying there is that it shouldn't be allowed usually, but in cases where one of the partners has been unfaithful, then that is a grounds for divorce. So he's saying in some situations, it is okay to divorce. Other reasons why Christians would say it's okay to get divorced is because Christianity is all about second chances and forgiveness. Christians believe everyone's done things wrong and that Jesus forgives them. And so people in a marriage that isn't working also deserve a second chance and need to kind of move on, forgive each other, and have a chance to be happy. And some people say, well, it's better to divorce than to live in a relationship where you hate one another, where you're cruel to one another, where maybe children are involved and are unhappy. So there are reasons to divorce, and it's better to do that in some situations than to stay together. So you have a section on your sheet to write up that bit from Matthew 19 verse 9. Remember, you can paraphrase it if you want. You don't have to write it word for word. And on another section in the sheet, it asks you to look at situation ethics, which is an ethical theory that we do at A-level, but I think we've talked about a few times in the GCSE. Situation ethics is proposed by a theologian called Joseph Fletcher, and it's based on the principle of agape, which is the Christian word for unconditional love. So it's the kind of love that God shows humanity. It's also based on the Golden Rule, which is Jesus' teaching of love your neighbour, or sometimes translated as treat others as you would like to be treated. And what situation ethics says is that allowing divorce and remarriage is the most loving thing to do in most situations. And so people who follow situation ethics would say that there are lots of good reasons to get a divorce. Okay, so what you can do, just to get a little bit more detail on these different Christian attitudes, is if you use the pages of the textbook that I sent out on Tuesday, and I'll send out again today, you could fill in a table a little bit like this. So what is the Roman Catholic view on divorce and remarriage? And you could put a little section at the bottom there of kind of new interpretations or modern understandings of that. What would the Church of England say? They often say, you know, it's not right, but it's the lesser of two evils, and those sorts of things. And what about other Protestants? Is there any difference in what other Protestant views might be? You could do this by writing task 5, which is about why some Christians do not allow divorce. Okay, your next task is a bit different. So what I'm going to do is on the next slide put up 2 letters written by people who are seeking a divorce. And one of those letters is addressed to a Catholic priest, and the other letter is addressed to an Anglican vicar. And so I'll help you work out which one's which, and then I'd like you to write a response to one of those letters from the point of view of either the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church. So this is the letter to the Catholic Church because it says, Dear Father John, and that's what the priests are often called in the Catholic Church. Okay, so this person's been married for 2 years, is unhappy, kind of drifted apart from each other, and would like to move on and meet somebody else. What do you think a Catholic priest would say about that? And try and write a response from their point of view. Even better if you can use a quote from the Bible. And this letter is written to a vicar in the Church of England, married for 10 years, and one partner has had an affair, still love each other. What do they do? Does the Bible offer any advice? How would you respond in that one? So you only need to pick one of those letters and write the response in your books, please, trying to use a quote from the Bible. Okay, so alternative attitudes to divorce. Situation ethics is one of those alternative attitudes that we're asked to look at. And the other one is a humanist response. Humanists are most often atheist or agnostic, but humanism is a non-religious worldview. So it's a kind of movement of people who agree with certain principles, even though they don't believe in the existence of a God or a supernatural being. So humanist means those who seek to live good lives without religious or superstitious beliefs. A humanist may embrace all or most of the other approaches introduced, sorry, that's from the humanism website. And in addition, humanists believe that moral values follow on from human nature and experience in some way. So humanists base their moral principles on reason, which leads them to reject the idea of supernatural agency. So they don't believe in God, they use kind of scientific approaches and reason. And they base their moral principles also on shared human values and respect for others. They believe that people should work together to improve the quality of life and make it more equitable. And humanism is a full philosophy, life stance or worldview, rather than being about one aspect of religion, knowledge or politics. So I've highlighted a few things there that I think relate to divorce. So they base their moral principles on reason. They have shared human values of respect for others. They believe you should work together to improve the quality of life for all. So in your books, I'd like you to use those paragraphs there to write down what you think a humanist would say about somebody who wants to have a divorce. Would they be accepting of that or not? And what about remarriage? Do you think they would suggest that it's good to remarry or not? Okay, so if you've paused and you've done all the tasks there, that's probably all of the time for your double lesson today. I hope you found that helpful. We are kind of zooming through this unit on relationships in the 21st century. You're doing a really good job. And just as always, email us if you get stuck, and please email in your work so that we can give you some feedback. That would be great. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.